Welcome back to American Zarathustra. This is a really, really fun show today. We've got my good friend Brant Danger from School of the West. How are you doing today, Brant?
I'm doing fine, sir, and happy Wednesday to everybody.
Happy Wednesday. Yes, I believe they call that Hump Day, halfway
Oh,
over the hill.
yeah.
How was your Christmas and New Year's?
Oh, they were splendid.
Nice.
I would like to officially lodge a complaint that there wasn't much snow,
Oh,
so I'm still a little. My feathers are ruffled over that,
oh,
but
didn't get a white
everything
Christmas.
else went well.
My understanding is where you live there is no snow, but I don't know.
That's right. It's disappointing. I keep praying for the Christmas miracle, but it
Yeah.
just doesn't quite pull off.
What's up with this global warming stuff? I don't think it's actually, we don't not, I don't know if it's working. It should be everything should be upside down by now.
Well, it's
But
working where I am.
okay, all right. Well, so today is an exciting show. Brent has been on American Zarathustra a bunch of times, specifically on the Critical Race Theory is Anti-White program. Brant is an extremely important person in our white well-being world. He runs a website called schoolofthewest.world, which is a homeschooling program for kids, and it's a white positive schooling. And I'm really proud to say that I'll be collaborating with him on developing some art history content at some point soon as well. So this show is kind of like a nice little bridge into that kind of curriculum. So I've done this afternoon at the museum show for a while now. I took a bit of a break over the holidays and stuff. I'm trying to kind of get back into action here. So before we go into looking at architecture from the World's Fair and architecture and sculpture from the 19th century, 1900, 1901, etc., we're going to do a quick look at a new commercial, if I can call it that. Is this a commercial for School of the West?
Yeah, you could call it that.
Okay. And it's beautifully done, and it gives everybody a nice introduction to who Brent is and what he does and the vitality and the importance of the work that he does. Then we're going to have a look at some articles, slur articles, if you will, that were written about him by the anti-whites. But let us kick it off here with the beautiful commercial.
Our children are under attack. Our civilization is under attack. No one is coming to save our children. It's up to us to create alternate institutions, including an alternate education system. Pulling your children out of government-run schooling is the first step. Giving them an education in white well-being is the next step. It's time to remember who we are. It's time for our children to know who they are. It's time for our children to learn what makes the white race unique. It's time for our children to learn the history they are denied by the anti-whites that control our textbooks. It's time for our children to learn the psychological tools to defeat the psychological attacks from anti-whites. It's time there was a school made for our people. It's time for School of the West.
Starting in January 2022, the School of the West will offer the first of its kind courses in white well-being. Our youth course will focus on European culture, earth science, anti-white propaganda, as well as relevant art projects. Our teen course will focus on how propaganda is used, the anti-white feelings of inferiority, the science of European migrations, achieving group well-being, the origin and effects of corruption, the importance of leadership, and the importance of tradition. A more detailed description of the courses offered can be found on the Membership Plans tab at schoolofthewest.world.
Lovely, beautifully done, very, very nicely done. And thank you to Arta Bach for letting us know the audio is good. Lovely. It's just so, it's very gentle. It's very specific. It's not kind of some kind of crazy political thing. It just simply says, these are the realities we're facing. Here's how we're dealing with it. This is beautifully done. Bravo.
Thank you. I was actually inspired by a video that Jared George made a couple of years ago called Who We Are. And it was just a gentle, subtle, yet it was a strong video. Kind of sounds like I'm talking about a romance novel right now. Gentle, strong, subtle.
Yeah, right. Or a fine line of some kind. Yeah. Yeah.
Just wanted to use this normal language that everyone would understand.
That's the thing. And honestly, sometimes you can say more with a gentle voice and not making some kind of a huge whoop and jumping up and down and screaming and yelling. And Jared's well known for that. He's a gentleman, very astute. He has a certain kind of a way of presenting himself that's very professional and academic. And also an incredible artist, musician on top of it. So it's Jason and Jared George are both huge influencers in our sphere, and I think that there's so many people that owe their content development, their inspiration to the no white guilt sphere, if you will. So hats off to those guys for sure. So now, having looked at this and seeing what you're doing with School of the West, let's take a look at something else that's going on. There were some very nasty articles written about you. Maybe you could take the lead. I'll pull it up on screen here. Was it Newsweek first or Daily Beast?
It was the Daily Beast first, and then it was Newsweek a few days after that.
Okay.
And I think, as you pointed out earlier, I think the articles are basically the same. There's probably some reciprocity between those two filthy little magazines.
Yeah.
And so I think what's happening is, for whatever reason, it came up on someone's radar.
Yeah.
And so this little worm here, Mark Hay, I think is in Brooklyn, New York. So he's in this little fantasy world that he lives in.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
He was trying to talk to me, and I wasn't going to talk to him about anything because I don't talk to anti-whites. They're not worth talking to.
No.
And so what he did is he tried to grab little bits of information from my life or from the website or from different interviews that I've been in. And he tried to piece those together, like grabbing pieces of a puzzle and jamming them in together to say, oh, look at this. Here's the story that I have. And so he's kind of like just making crap up. He's on the very, very edge of just completely lying with what he's doing right here. You can even look at the picture there. It looks like a Ku Klux Klan hat.
No.
Like, look at this school. It's a racist school. So it's just childish garbage.
I mean, they paid somebody to create this image, I assume, it's so comical. The weird sociopathic paranoia that these people feel. I just wanted to read a tiny bit here. Under the pseudonym Brant Danger, a white Arizona school teacher is riding the wave of panic over critical race theory. I could just stop right there and go off on a huge tangent explaining to him what is critical race theory, but obviously he's an anti-white. He hates whites and Western kind, so why try? In a mission to indoctrinate white kids across America, the School of the West recently launched an online educational resource for homeschooling, offers a smattering of materials, but its key selling point is a unique and deeply disturbing field of study that the site has dubbed white well-being. It's white well-being. He's saying in very plain terms, white well-being is deeply disturbing. I mean, how much more anti-white can you get? I mean, what is this insane stuff to me?
I don't know, but he exposes himself for what he is right there. He's exposing himself.
Mm-hmm.
And I owe all the credit, like you said earlier, to Jason on this, because he formulated this terminology over decades.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as soon as someone attacks white well-being, like this little worm has done,
Mm-hmm.
it exposes them for what they are, because you're basically saying that these people here should not have well-being.
Mm-hmm.
They should be attacked psychologically and physically and driven off of this planet till they don't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, you'd have a big giant mess, but this guy's too damn stupid to realize any of that. He's in his own little hateful world.
Yeah.
So white well-being, it's not a trap, but as soon as someone attacks it, the trap has sprung on them. They brought it on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And the flip side of that is that if I'm talking to a bunch of moms that are homeschooling their kids, the thing that's going to get through to them is talking about white well-being coming from that point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you want to get young males involved, you can come from a totally different point of view. But if you want to get moms, quote, normie moms, vague moms, Republican moms,
sure,
you have to have the right type of terminology and the right approach. So white well-being, it sounds kind of innocuous, kind of nebulous, like, oh, that sounds kind of dorky. What does that mean? There's a lot more power there than it actually seems like.
Oh yeah, I feel it for sure. I think that it's in a way, these kinds of articles show that you're doing something right, that you're having, and they don't know it. Liberals are so ignorant in this way that they're advertising us by writing these kinds of articles. When you have someone who's like kind of insane, and they scream on top of the hills, oh, Donald Kent is this or Brent Danger is that, and everyone sees they're insane, then they draw conclusions from that, saying, oh, well, then he's probably pretty good. Let's go see what he's doing, because like I don't take advice from crazy people, especially crazy people who hate me and want to disempower me and censor me and exterminate me and replace me and these kinds of things. So it's, I don't know, I in my heart, of course there's an anger and a frustration over this, but there's also like a profound sadness at how this came to be. And it just punctuates the importance of your work. So let's look at the other article. Now, Newsweek did an article on you as well. So is there any difference in the two, or what might you say about the Newsweek article?
I believe that the Newsweek article is essentially the same as the Daily Beast article. I think some of the terminology is different. And then what the young lady did who wrote that article is she tried to tie in what I'm doing, like right here, with other teachers as well. Like, that's not a picture of me, but no. It says Florida teacher. Yeah. So they're trying to lump all of this together. Like, oh my God, look at all of these Nazis that were teaching our kids. This is terrible. So once again,
I remember when this story came out, and I thought, it's disturbing to me that teachers have to kind of hide, and that they have to kind of like, that they can lose their jobs. It's well known among my followers on my channel that I was in education for many, many years. And that's a big part of my history and my background. I'm so glad to be able to work with you on developing curriculum, etc. But I know, of course, as an insider, that the education field is it's a liberal-dominated field. It's a female-dominated field through which feminism is like deeply interwoven. That has opened the door to turn it into a giant kind of POC love fest where everything is anti-white, everything is pro-POC, and it's one in place of the other. It's taking away from one, taking away from Western civilization, destroying standards, not punishing kids for, violent behaviors. I could go on and on. I don't want to turn the whole show into that, but we know these things, and white teachers who are normal people and love their race and don't want to do harm to other races, they try to stand up. They try to talk about these things kind of in private meetings or whatever, or even publicly, and they get fired. So, to be kind of portraying those people as the villains, like Newsweek is really colluding with the enemy. And it's just mind breaking to see that they can't understand these things. How much are they intentionally doing this, and how much are they just kind of zombies who are so indoctrinated that they drank the Kool-Aid? What's your take on that?
I think it's kind of a feedback loop where each iteration, as you bring new teachers into a school, most of the time it's women, and they have this little misplaced motherly instinct where they want to take care of every brown child anywhere on the planet that cried about something, and they don't have the ability to understand how to affect quality control in a system or an organization or a government or a country. They're horrible at defending the borders. They don't see the reasons for borders. And without going off into a big tangent here, after women were given the right to vote, things started changing. Okay. And I would argue that they didn't change for the better. All right. So if you want your countries to get ripped apart, just institute feminism and let that run wild. Don't put any brakes on it. Put them in charge of schools, and you're going to see what happens. Well, what we have right now is a public education system which is run by and large, feminism. And it causes lots of problems. And I know that I talked about this on the shows with you and Daniel Concanon, so I won't go too far into that. But to kind of underline that, at the beginning of that little commercial that I made, there was a little bit of lag there at the beginning, but it looked like some articles from a magazine. So those are magazines I copied. I ran off copies of those are NEA magazines that I got past year.
These are what NEA is. They don't.
National Educators Association. It's the main teachers union for the United States, and it is
which is headed by a Jewish woman, by the way. Just had to throw that in.
Well, I would be totally surprised if it was a white person. And that union is extremely anti-white. Those articles there, like racism and equality and diversity, all this kind of shit, that's the whole thing. That's all those magazines are. It's not about teaching, pedagogy. It's all like, white people, you suck and you need to die. You need to die right now. That's all of that shit is full of those magazines.
Absolutely. So just a quick short story. When I was getting my art education degree, I'm the only male and there were maybe like 3 guys in the whole program. One dropped out, it's all women. And I can remember being in a class, the only male in the class. And you have this older feminist female professor. And she says just point blank out to everybody, like, I'm schooled in the ways of feminism, and if anybody wants to go into my private tutelage on feminism, then see me after class. And some of the girls were like, what's feminism? I mean, they were like, fresh off the boat, and she said openly, like, it's about usurping the power from men, and I'm like, I mean, I was sort of like, what planet am I on here? But this is what's normal. And they're all this is planned out. It goes back to, our viewers know the history of cultural Marxism and the Frankfurt School and blah, blah, blah. So, but, God bless people like this teacher here from Florida, other white women who are doing good things and are not crazy and are not like poisoned by feminism. A lot of the female content producers in our sphere, God bless them, so it's easy for us to get angry and kind of lump things together, but we have to kind of give love and respect to our ladies in the right wing as well. So,
Oh yeah, I'm not attacking all women in general. I'm just attacking, explicitly what feminism stands for,
yeah.
and also trying to point out psychologically the differences between men and women.
Mm.
And men place more importance on defending the borders, defending the tribe, having quality control of whatever the operation or the tribe is.
Mm.
Women have different priorities. So if
Yeah.
you start mixing those things together, if you take women who have priorities of, oh, if I see a little baby, whatever, I want to take care of it.
Yeah.
If you start putting them in charge where that's going to be a liability, things start getting screwed up. And that's one reason why
You're very
you have people like Angela Merkel who says, "Oh yeah, everyone just come into Europe. It's fine." Okay, that's not okay.
No, I know it's madness. It's pathological altruism, but there's something we all know that when you remove a woman from her kind of biological destiny, then she's going to try to fill it with something else, and then you have the phenomenon of the cat ladies and the dog ladies and the obsession with gay men because they can't find a man and they're a failure as a woman. So they obsess about gay men and it's which then makes them even less attractive. And it's just a horrible kind of a downward spiral for these women, and they need to be saved just as well. How, I don't know. That's a nightmare to even think about. But anyway, on to some positive and enjoyable stuff here. Welcome to Afternoon at the Museum, wherever you are in the world. And thank you to the people in the audience that have come along. We're going to look at the the architecture and sculpture of the World's Fair. So if anyone's familiar with around 1900, 1901, there were these events called the World Fair in different cities in America, and I believe some in Europe. And what's astonishing about this is that these were places in which people of European descent came together to show off the best of whatever it is that they were producing. And then when it was done, they would tear it all down and move it to the next exhibit or take it back to their home country. And so a lot of the amazing architecture that you're going to see is no longer. It just was set up for the purpose of the fair. And so, which to me is devastating because I'm like, this is what America should look like, not the kind of garbage, condos and strip malls and the rest of it. This is, I will say in a way that this is kind of what the Imperium looks like to me, only with Wi-Fi. It should have, something of that nature. So it's fairly mind-blowing to see. And I'm going to zoom in on some specific works, and then I'll ask you what your thoughts are. But it's mind-blowing to think that, putting together these structures was just something that, oh yeah, let's do this. It shows the level of, I don't know, of amazement that I have, I guess, but like it shows the level of skill, craft, intelligence, creativity, inventiveness. It just shows the greatness of Western civilization and the things and try to imagine people doing this now compared to say back then, So a lot of these halls that they had, or these buildings that they made for these exhibits, also featured people and events and artists, arts from other countries as well. It was kind of like what the Epcot Center is today. They had these kind of fairs where you could see people from, say, Indonesia, doing some kind of a tribal dance or, various things of that nature. But and then a lot of the architecture was themed on something. There would maybe be a certain type of a theme. If it could be something about mythology or freedom or religion or this or that. Here we can see in this image, as soon as it comes up, hope the computer won't be too slow. You have you've got the head of Statue of Liberty here, you know. So there's just this would be a building dedicated to France. And so you go in there and you could enjoy, all kinds of different cultural aspects of life in France, for example. But I'm curious, oh dear, what your interest was in architecture specifically. Why did you want to talk about that or look at that for today's show?
Well, because I think that architecture combines our love for beauty. So there's art embedded in it, but also it's a structure, it's engineering. There's math involved. And so you can have something that's beautiful, maybe feminine, like there's like when you look at a Baroque chamber for music, if you've got your quartet playing, you have all these, I don't know the technical terms, you get all these little golden gilded leaves and flowery stuff, and there's crap all over the place. And that's okay for me, that's all right. And you could maybe describe that as feminine. And then you've got your Roman columns, like maybe it's feminine or masculine, but you have got your horses up there. You've got your soldiers, Greek soldiers, whatever the heck those guys are up there. That's pretty cool. I'm 4 years old and I see that and I thought, yeah, I like that. I want to have some toys that look like that. Okay, that's masculine. And then the structure itself is masculine. It's foreboding. It's strong. And like a castle. I've never met a little kid that didn't like a castle. That's masculine. So there's thinking that goes into that. You've got to get your supplies together. You've got to get your people together. You can put a little bit of art into it. There's rationale behind it. Do you have a keep? Do you have a moat? Do you have an outer wall? What type of, drawbridges you have, basilicas, etc. So all of our thinking comes into play when we create structures.
Yeah, indeed. It's the perfect merger of math and art, and in so many ways. It's just amazing to me. Not only that, but carving digging up all this stone and then carving it to like the millimeter, so that everything can fit, and then transporting it, putting it back together in some kind of like a puzzle almost, where everything aligns. It's mind-blowing to think of the manpower, the planning, and the, not only that, trying to think of every sculptor who had to spend a lifetime just to get the skills to make the kind of sculpture that you see embedded in these pieces. So like it's really truly mind-blowing. And this is, 100, some years ago, 122 years ago. So you're thinking, could we, first of all, even have the gumption to do this today, like the heart, the spirit to do something like this today. And then, these guys did it with their hands. So this is a show of Western greatness. It's really, truly what it is. It's kind of flexing the muscle of like Western greatness. So like, if I'm king someday, the whole of like America and the colonies, etc., they'll all look like this. To me, this is really what the Imperium should look like, something of this nature, with like great beauty, and we see ourselves reflected in it. When I think about like Soviet communist architecture, the kind of like these big gray blocks, and it's soul crushing. It destroys your sense of yourself. Even in China, like these mega cities, you're really, every day the city around you reflects back to you that you're just a cog in the machine, that you don't have humanity, you don't have identity. Now, granted, China has fabulous architecture that they, can reflect themselves back upon and feel the greatness of their civilization. But, I'm kind of drawing an analogy here with like communism and how it destroys those aspects. But here, and something like a fountain, it seems like it's a sort of in light of an architectural structure. It could be like a centerpiece. It could be a sort of a promenade, an area that connects different hallways or different aspects of a sculpture, or rather of a building. And then it functions in some kind of a beautiful way. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this piece here, on this photo.
Well, I think one thing that sets what we're looking at in these pictures apart from what we might see today is if there's something that's made today, it's going to be made for the lowest cost. It's going to be made to some certain specs.
Yeah.
And it's just going to have some function, and then it might work or it might not. Now, back here, when we're looking at this fountain here, or previously when we were looking at the back of that statue on that reflecting pool, people used to work on things, or as you were talking about, someone had to take a lifetime to develop the skills to do that. We couldn't do that today because there was a completely different mindset and a different society back then, where generations of boys or generations of girls would learn the skills from their fathers or from a tradesman. And if you want to talk about, genetic inheritance, now I haven't looked at the literature on this in a long time, but over time, if someone made shoes, or someone was a wheelwright, or someone repaired boats, or someone was a sculptor, slowly each generation would actually get a little bit better at it. They were born more talented because that was in the family line.
Yeah.
And not everyone wanted to have a cell phone and be on TV and be on the internet and be famous and do all this other type of crap. Yeah. So the other thing, I'm giving a long-winded answer here, is people had a sense of the spiritual, the supernatural, religion, whatever you want to call it. So I think they felt connected to that. And you can see this beauty when people created these things. This is not just something that's going to have some water dripping down. This is going to have something that is, what do you call it when something looks the same on the left and the right?
Oh, symmetry. It has
symmetry. Yeah, symmetry. Yeah. That word. It's got beautiful symmetry. If you look at it from 90 degrees, 90 degrees, 90 degrees.
Yeah, which creates a certain balance. Actually, it's quite beautiful.
The symmetry, the balance, beautiful lines.
Yeah.
This might be something that a person or a team of people worked on, and maybe this is like a signature piece for them. So they want people to know that they did that. They want to show how beautifully they can put something together.
No, it's exquisite.
So there's a lot of pride that goes into this.
There you go. See, there you go. Standards, the kind of standards that you see in this kind of work is it's like mind blowing. I just can only imagine the feeling of being in these places. This is on my bucket list, is to go to Europe and be around sculpture like this, but ideally we really need something like this in America. We need a lot more of this in North America, I would say. But yeah, and so here you have an no, that's a photograph that looked like an illustration. But it just shows, quite how beautiful and lovely this is here. And we've got what looks to be sort of allegories for freedom, nationalism, something about labor, the fruits of your labor, and family, and various other themes. It's quite powerful stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, just the amount of hours that it takes to put something like that together is just amazing, because you have the sculptures on top, you have the height, you'd have to have the scaffolding, and you have to lift it up. You have the frieze across the top.
Sure.
The columns, everything.
Yeah. It's just beautifully mind-blowing. Exposition des Beaux-Arts. So this would be some kind of an art museum here. That's quite lovely. So there's literally hundreds of photos in this article that are quite wonderful. Even something like the gateways, that there's something put in here. This is can't really read that very well. I'm trying to get a little more information on it, but I would imagine there's a lot of nationalist symbols, put in there as well, with the crowns, these griffins, different cultures having sort of different hallmarks and mythological creatures that they sort of associate themselves with. It's quite wonderful.
Well, one thing here before you zoom out too much, Donald, you're talking about standards. So look how the people are dressed in this photo, and go to a mall and look how people are dressed now.
When people started doing the thing where they wear their pajamas out and about, I'm like, what? Like, what's next? And you just walk around in your underwear. I mean, I don't know. That's sad. It's just so terribly sad, and that all fits in with the whole concept of white well-being is to carry yourself with love and respect. To know who you are, what you come from, what you're capable of, and celebrate that and be proud of that.
Yeah.
And I look at, say, like all the young people that died of, say, fentanyl overdoses, or certain kinds of aspects of culture where they only listen to hip hop, or and they have no idea who they are. And this is really only 100 years ago. That's not a very, very long time. Here you've got cars down at the bottom of the picture here. So that couldn't have been that. I don't know exactly. That looks more like in the 1930s. But still, like, how did things change so much in such a relatively short period of time? It's it's kind of mind-bending to me how damaging the quote globalists have been to us by taking over all of our institutions.
Yeah, and without going off on a tangent, as we all know about that, it was what you just said right there, but also a complete failure of our leadership to allow that to happen. Instead of taking care of the citizens, they took care of the few people with a lot of money. The rest is history.
Right. It's great to come upon people in history who warned us, whoever they may be, like, Sir Isaac Mosley, or his name escapes me right now. He's a famous pilot.
Lindbergh,
yeah. And I just heard it was one of the Nixon tapes where Richard Nixon was talking to Billy Graham. So this is probably in, I guess, the 60s. And it's a private phone call, and he's talking about what a sort of shame it is that Israel shot down a 707 passenger plane, and all these people were slaughtered. And like, Billy Graham is saying, like, well, he quotes the synagogue of Satan in the Bible, and he talks about how if we don't do something, this is going to get out of control. And they didn't have any idea about how serious this specific problem is. Maybe they did, but they didn't know what to do about it, I guess, or one thing, or I don't know. It's anybody's guess, really, why they didn't stop it.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's really our generation that has to take that battle on, and that's part of why I feel that you have to name the problem. If I'm a doctor and you come to me, you're dying, but I'm afraid to use the word cancer, and I have to find every other word I can, but don't tell you have cancer, then I'm a failure as a doctor, and probably a failure as a human being. So you have to say what the problem is in order to fix the problem. But anyway, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here. This is a really excellent. Yeah. Well, I don't feel enough people in our sphere talk about that. I mean, on the one hand, you have people that are super angry and are very insulting and bad optics on that topic, and then you've got the other extreme of don't talk about it at all, because that'll turn people away from white well-being. And I guess I'm in the middle. But anyway, this is a beautiful piece here. What's your impression on this photo?
Well, whatever's going on the left side there, I'm a little confused because it looks like George Washington's head,
isn't it? Yeah.
And then I see a wing down there, like he's riding a little duck or a dragon.
I think what it is that he's like, there's an eagle as the kind of sort of like the base of the sculpture, and this is a bit more like a bust where it's that kind of like, I don't know, it's just a sort of a symbolic decoration. And then he appears to be holding a piece of paper, a parchment of some kind. So yeah, it's more like a bust, it's not like he's riding on a tiny eagle.
Well, yeah, it's beautifully done.
It is.
And this I don't know if that's a hoplite over to Washington's left, or I can't tell because he's got a bow and arrow there.
Oh, the other side. Let
Yeah,
me
I'm
jump.
not sure what kind of headdress he has, but that's
It
I'm
looks
sure
like
that.
some kind of old Roman type of
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
guard there with that sort of helmet style. Even look at the light fixture here with
yeah.
all the
I just noticed that.
like the chandelier with the glass. I mean, everywhere you look, you're just overwhelmed with beauty everywhere you look, and it's so stunning. This is one of the reasons why I love going into churches, because churches seem, Catholic churches, I don't know about other churches, but they seem to be some of the only places now where you can go in and have an aesthetic experience that is spiritual in a sense. Um, where I live, we have our city hall that was made in the 1930s, and it has a lot of very, very nationalistic kind of architectural aesthetic to it. It was a time before sort of Hitler became the bad guy, and it's got all these kinds of like fascist style eagles and stuff sort of embedded into it, and statues of different heroic beings that represent like truth and justice and honesty and hard work, all these kind
Mhm.
of the architecture symbolizes eternally who you are as a people and who you're supposed to be, and it carries that message. So in a sense, it's kind of like a cultural church. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I was just thinking about myself when I was a little kid as you were talking about that. One of the things that had a big impact on me when I was a kid was comic books.
No.
Number one, because of the vocabulary that was used. Because when you write a comic book, you don't have a lot of space for a big dialogue, so you
Yeah.
have to abbreviate what people say, and you have to use larger words. So I
Yeah.
developed a larger vocabulary by reading comic books when I was a kid,
Me
but
too.
also the physical perfection, which is drawn into all the male and female characters.
Mm.
So those were, to me, kind of like a two-dimensional representation of statuary. And
Mm.
then also, you have your goody good guys, and they're always fighting the bad guys. It's very easy for a little kid to look at this character, this fictional character, and think of them as a role model.
Yeah.
Now, of course, most people grow out of that. Some people still wear jerseys with other people's names on the back of the jersey, which is pathetic. But to me, that's beauty. It's a lot easier to do because it's two-dimensional. I'm not knocking it, because I know that you do that and you do great work as well. But to me, it's sort of the same thing. It's just in a different format. It's just so much more work, and it's
Yeah.
so much more permanent when you build that out of marble.
My God. Yeah. And the permanence of it, the weight of it, the seriousness of it. So there's an interesting relationship between the architecture and the sculpture. I'm noticing it's probably very hard for people to see this, but along the edge of this building here at this area where I'm drawing with my little cursor, there are numerous little figures, like human statues. And I don't know what they are, but I would assume that they must represent something, maybe something, I don't know, in mythology or something of that nature. But again, it's just the greatness of Western civilization. It's to be a part of this, to know that this is your heritage. I think it's healthy, it's important, it's essential, instead
Yeah.
of listening to say like hip hop and trying to find out what the new designer drugs are or something. Like, why not go into your own history and your own people? We're discouraged from doing that because like that disturbing term of white well-being. Oh my God, that who would dare teach children their own well-being, like white children, that they're not allowed to be healthy. So this is one of the ways in which I think that we can enlighten children to their heritage, to their biospirit. And that's an interesting question. I wanted to ask you, as a professor, or rather a teacher,
Ooh,
how
yeah.
do you approach the topic of the biospirit when teaching it to kids?
Okay. So what I do is I teach the concept of biospirit and Western kind at the same time, because
Okay.
you have to understand, first of all, that there's been different races evolve over the planet in different geographic areas. And I don't get into the specifics of, okay, we were created with Adam and Eve, or we came from something before monkeys, or aliens came down and spliced something.
Yeah.
That doesn't really matter. We were brought up in different areas, so we have different types of hair. Our eyes let in different amounts of light. Our skin blocks or lets in light, etc. We have
Yeah.
different bone structures. We have different brains, all sorts of stuff, because each race was suited for the environment that they're in. So there are if I can use a bad word here, there is a shit ton of differences between the races. The kids need to understand that. The skin color is just one thing. That's it. That's just one thing. Anyone who says, well, race is only skin deep, you're either an idiot or you're a liar. Okay. So we need to get past that crap. Now, yeah. So once they understand that foundation of the races are very different, the races are going to replicate the type of societies that they make wherever their homes were. You put them in different places and they're going to keep replicating that. They're going to act the same way. They're going to try and talk the same way. Their physical mannerisms, how much they move around, how do they dance, how violent are they, how intelligent are they, what type of buildings do they make, are their institutions functioning well, do they want to have quiet societies, do they want to have noisy societies, do they pick up their trash, do they leave crap all over the place, do they like to be organized? All of these things are different manifestations of what you would call biospirit. And again, this is a term that came from Jason. So for people that can't really understand that, you can simply say something like this. Okay, you get a very inhospitable island and you put white people on that island, you get Iceland. You get a place which has nice warm weather, you put black people on it, you get Haiti. Okay. There's nothing magical about Haiti or Iceland. It's the people, it's the culture. And if you have isolated pockets of black people within a white society, you're going to get little shithole places that are all run down and don't work that well. And white people don't want to live there because they don't want the damn violence and they don't want the dysfunction and everything else. Now it doesn't, so it sounds like I'm being critical of blacks right now. I'm only being critical of blacks within the context of me having to pretend that they're the same as me, which is nonsense. Now you've got your East Asians, you've got your Mongolians, your Southeast Asians, your Aborigines, your Malaysians, your Arabs, you got all this sort of stuff. So everyone's a little bit different. So with repeated examples of showing differences between people, the kids will automatically pick that up and then they'll understand it. And then we can look at pictures like this. We can look at these beautiful feminine forms here. We can talk about this is the biospirit of Western kind. Now, do we have this stuff from Arabs, or do we have this from Chinese? Do we have this from blacks? They might have something that approximates this in their own biospirit, but they're not going to replicate this. We make this right here.
I don't understand why we have to explain the obvious to people. I mean, as a guy who loves the arts and who lived in Asia for 5 years and studied, the painting, I mastered Asian painting, landscape painting, etc. I love, I like Brazilian music and I like, African sculpture, and it's all different. It's a buffet of human cultures, but I will never ever say that African sculpture is exactly like the sculpture we're looking at here. Why would I? It's just stupid. It's just so stupid. And once again, where does it all come from? It's that insane cultural Marxist mentality that everything has to be kind of packaged into one sameness, that that the world is this big melting pot and and all this like fake equity or fake equality. You can appreciate everything for what it is. And I don't, I just can't wrap my head around why that needs to be explained to anybody. It's so clear, right? And I tell you, there was a time when I was in a public park in the city near where I live, and there were these African immigrants. I don't know where they were from. They were climbing on the sculptures and taking pictures of themselves, like totally animalian, like completely uncivilized, to be climbing up on like statues of, whatever in the parks and such. That these are like statues that have been there 100 years, and they're like, famous people in our history, etc. And I thought, like, what if I went to your country and did that? Like, I wanted to just like, punch these kids, and I was like, this is grotesquely disrespectful, and it. Come on, you're not. This isn't like this cute or something. You're doing this to be disrespectful to my people and my culture, my history, my heritage, and nobody would do anything because they're Black. They're going to hurt you. And so we live under terrorism. We live under a racial terrorism. And what do they want to do? They want to go after our greatness and things like our arts, our music, our history, our traditions, etc. So anyway, that's just a kind of an aside. But so
let me throw one thing in there, because this kind of ties it together. I believe, and I've had this discussion with others, and I had this discussion with Black friends of mine when I was younger. It is the inferiority complex that non-whites have when they look at what whites have accomplished, which fuels their hate, their rage that they have. They cannot compete with this type of beauty right here. Now, if they can't make it, what can they do to make things equal? They can attack it and tear it down.
Yeah.
And they've been given the big giant green light to do that.
Yeah. They've been tearing down all kinds of sculptures. Right?
Yeah. What I have to say to other people, I mean, maybe you shouldn't go up and, grab a bunch of, Black kids or whatever and yank them off of statues. I mean, everyone's got to decide what they're going to do. Yeah. But what I want to say to people that are just feel like they're just scared shitless to do anything, look, you are free men and you are free women, and you can be assertive. You can stand up for yourself and you can stand up for your people. And things are not going to change until we get enough of us standing up for our people. Mm-hmm. And to be kind of vulgar here, if you're a male, you need to reach down between your legs and see if you have a set of balls. And if you do, start acting like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's very simple. Granted, in today's environment, there's a real threat of violence against you for doing that. But at the same time, we've got to do something. We have to do something. And if barring, what's the word I'm looking for? A full-blown ethnostate where we don't have to live around this, we have to somehow or other do this. And it's easy to do it behind the screen of a computer, but like me being in that circumstance, I was racially outnumbered. And not only that, the whites in that environment were typical liberal kind of whites, so they would have sided with these Black kids.
Right. Yeah. I'm not talking about your particular instance. I'm just saying in general, there's probably thousands of instances every day where a white person could have just been assertive and they wouldn't even do that. They're just a wet noodle. They just flop over. It's so frustrating and embarrassing to see white people act that way.
Yeah. I think that is the topic of I think there should be an entire channel based or just all about methods for us to break into conversation on white well-being, on how to call out anti-whiteism, on ways to navigate conversations in which we're winning, but not in a way that we're argumentative or fighting or just the usual BS that goes on between, like the right wing and the left wing. It's a really, really, really important topic. I have my ways. I know my ways. I'm subtle, and I make like little jokes that make people kind of wink at you. Like, I know what you mean. I just don't have the guts to say it, like there's that. and you gauge case by case where, I met some dude who, he was telling me where he went to school as a kid. And I'm like, oh my God, that neighborhood's horrible now. And he's like, well, it wasn't that bad when I was there, but I did get, beat up by Blacks and this and that. And then I used that as a crowbar to open up the discussion on race realism. And like the amazement that this guy had of like, oh my God, like I can actually be honest to somebody and tell the truth about what I'm thinking. And he's a dude, like he's got black friends. He's not trying to do some big racist kind of thing. It's just that he was targeted, and then of course now you wouldn't be caught dead in that neighborhood, or you would be caught dead in that neighborhood, So you've got to feel out the situation. I was with some friends recently. We were lifting actually, and one started going off about how, oh well, where we live is not like other down south where there's more integration and nobody's like worried about race and stuff. And I'm like, why do we have to like measure everything by how closely whites live to blacks? Like, how is that? Who made that the measurement of like a good society? Like, because if you look at the crime statistics, you're going to see that it's not good, So anyway, again, millions of cool tangents, interesting and important tangents, but and then back to the art. Look at this one. This is it's almost like overwhelming, honestly. Like if you look, let me zoom in a little bit. This is as far as I can zoom in. Look at the size of these sculptures. Now, as I pull over, look at the size of the people.
Are those miniature people or full size people?
No, they're like a third of the size of the sculpture. Yeah, so that would mean that the sculptures are at least like say 15-foot tall people or something like that, if they were real. And it's just a celebration of who we are. It's a celebration of Western civilization, and we need this. God in heaven, we need this so much. To me, this is the Imperium. This is what the Imperium would look like.
Yeah.
And then something like this sort of dome with like glass.
Yeah, that's cool looking. That almost looks metal there. It almost looks like some kind of type of a rocket ship starting to take off. It looks something kind of militaristic.
Right around, I think it's 1901 when electricity came out. And prior to that, you had a lot more glass integrated into these buildings to allow, of course, the light to come in and whatnot. But anyway, that's...
Yeah, and see one thing here. Okay, so that building right there, that dome that you're looking at, that could have been built like a cylinder, okay, with the flat top. But look at the graceful curve all the way up, all the extra complexity that causes just to put that in there. But
there's a whole thing right there. You could go into an entire discussion of art critique and the flow, the elements and principles of arts, the way it leads the eye up heavenwards, and the decorative quality, the pattern, the balance. It's and then this is something I've always found interesting about Western architecture is the idea of putting a sculpture at the very, very top of a building.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me of the top of a Christmas tree. You put a little angel or something up there. Wow. We're replicating that when we're decorating our trees.
And you figure like nobody can go up there and actually look at it. It's too far away to get like a really close look. But we do it anyway. There's got to be, in a sense, it must represent the spirit of the building in some way, and it almost seems to want to communicate with heaven or with another, like a heavenly realm. It's quite powerful. Well, there we go. There's a close up of what I was just talking about.
She's on one leg.
Yeah, I know. And she's on one leg, so she's got it looks like she's holding two wreaths. I've seen this figure numerous times in the World Fair. It's this kind of an angel holding two wreaths.
Oh, I've seen that. Okay, I think I've seen a picture of that, but it looks like it's made out of a polished bronze or almost a gold in the color photos that I've seen. And then also below there, are those boars or?
No, these are lion heads.
Lions, okay.
Yeah, which obviously is very regal. Here you have these kind of like water nymphs or something of this kind. Every single inch of this thing is unbelievable. You have these the griffins, and then the question is why? Why would we do this? What kind of people do these sorts of things? I think there's a lot of greatness here. It says a lot again about the Western biospirit.
Yeah, it shows a passion and intelligent and a talent and attention to detail, wanting to get things done correct, just for the sake of getting it done correct, because all of this beauty doesn't have to be on this building. It'll still stand up even if it was just ugly. It looked like it was Soviet. But there's importance in creating all of this.
Man, it saddens me to think, like, where did it all go? Like, why would you tear all that down? You should build an entire civilization off of this kind of thing. But this is exquisite. It's totally insane. First of all, look at the size of the benches here where people would sit, and then look at the size of that sculpture. This appears to be bronze. So how much money would that even cost just to get all the materials together for that? And this powerful, this looks like St. George who kills the dragon. Am I right? Our British friends in the chat should be able to tell us here. So that's highly heroic. And even way up in the background, there's all these paintings of these little cherubs. You have kind of like, I don't know, sort of cherubs and flowers and different sorts of themes. And then, of course, stained glass windows. It's just mind-blowing stuff. It really, really is. This is what is going on here with these horses.
No, that's cool looking.
Oh, my Lord. That's off the charts. And then this.
It's off the charts, all right.
It is. It's insane. I mean, this is just one building. And there's like dozens and dozens of them. So it's like, I'm kind of at a loss for words, really, when I look at this sort of stuff.
Yeah, people can look at this and they can think, okay, this is who we are. All of this art here, this binds the people together.
Yeah.
If someone comes over and insults you, when you live back in this time period and you get a bunch of Africans climbing on the sculptures, people are going to drag them off of the sculptures and they're not going to put up with it. So our people are like a watery, wet weekend, wet noodle, beaten down, brainwashed people compared to the people that made this.
I know. Only.
And the point though is this is inside of us right now. Even though we're not building this now, this is inside of us. We just got to reignite that fire.
Yeah. See, that's the whole thing. I mean, why continue to make ugly architecture? I mean, obviously that's a business. And I think this opens up a can of worms here about the topic of, say, capitalism, or, that a government should measure the health of its nation by, the GDP, by like how much money or how well the economy is flowing. What about this? This is a healthy culture. This is what a healthy culture looks like. Not how many people went to the mall this weekend. It's sickening to me to compare those things. I would imagine that a culture that could build this is very, very literate as to what everything means. Whereas I have to research that stuff. I would have to look up, what's the theme here? It must be based on some mythology or something. Again, with the glass ceilings here. And of course, there's a lot of iron work involved in that. It's a whole other art. I don't know if art's the word I want to say, but like the trade or the skill of iron working, this is off the charts. So, you almost don't, it's almost unbelievable, really, to kind of look at these things. So you figure, okay, this is in French below, but exhibition, the vestibule of the Grand Gallery of Industrial Diverses. I don't know. I better brush up on some French, but let's say that the diverse aspects of industrial arts, say, for example. So it's just dedicated to that. And if we look right here, look real close, it says architecture. So you would assume that this hallway here, or that part of the building, is featuring some special things related to architecture, whereas there would be other wings and maybe different aspects. But then up here we have this exquisite paintings. Here you see Scottish men in their kilts with bagpipes. You see women wearing some kind of garb that looks more like Eastern European, I would say. You've got Spaniards on horseback with the kind of classic Spaniard clothing. That right there is the Imperium. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's a white Imperium. It's a beautiful thing to see the family of like Mediterranean and Celtic and Eastern European peoples all once again coming around this kind of angel with the two wreaths. You know, here it is, folks. This is the way back. You know, this is what we should be looking at.
Yeah, I think one of the underlying factors of why this isn't being made now is because this is made by a white society right here, what we're looking at. And in the current insanity of everyone is exactly the same and there's no such thing as race, except if you're talking about white people and they need to be exterminated, you can't do this.
Yeah.
You'd have to do this privately. You're not going to get help from society. You're not going to get help from the government.
Yeah. See, that's a huge question. Is like where did the funding come from for all this? You know, that's again, it's something I'll have to do a little bit of research on. This is a topic I'm profoundly interested in, but it's obviously a huge subject. Exquisite stuff here. This some kind of theme on time. That's something you might. Oh, you can kind of look closer here, and there are all these like clockworks in here, all sort of like the art of clockmaking. You know, that was a whole other time, right? You know,
Yeah.
That's exquisite. It's very charming. But even that in itself is very white. Like time consciousness is an extremely white trait, I think.
Yeah, being on time.
Yeah. And you've even heard like, oh, you know, the people who believe in critical race theory, that type of person, they say, oh, well, like math is racist and being on time, being punctual is racist. You know, if you can't be on time, then you're just you're like, you need to step up your game or go live in a country where nobody gives a shit about time and nothing gets done, you know.
Yeah.
But don't pull the rest of us down with your ridiculous, absurd isms about like time is racist. Come on, you know, how in a sense, our sense of time. Look at this hourglass here with the wings on it, like time is flying. Isn't that beautiful? That's poetic. But our very sense of time is plugged right in with our greatness and the greatness of Western civilization. You know, that there is only so much time. And then not only that, passing the torch from generation to generation, which plugs in with what you were talking about earlier. Yeah. So there's really an insane amount of beautiful photos to look at. I think this could be broken up into like several shows, to be honest. But I usually go for about an hour. So, and we've gone a little bit over the hour mark here. Is there any maybe closing thoughts you'd like to add on what we're looking at or what you'll be doing in the future with School of the West?
Well, I guess a comment to summarize everything is that, okay, I'm getting tired of my dog barking. Sorry about that. It's my white well-being dog.
Yeah.
Is that you made some comments earlier about the people that are subverting us. They can be called parasites, whatever. Yep, that's true.
Yeah.
But an analogy that I like to think about is if you have an extremely strong immune system, it doesn't matter how many germs you're going to be around, you're going to be okay. So identifying those germs, like you were talking about, if you're a doctor, and getting rid of those is something that needs to be done. But in my mind, we need to have a healthy immune system first. So teaching our people about our biospirit, building that up to where we're in a position that we realize, you know what, we are in charge of the countries that we built, not someone else.
Yeah.
We are in charge.
Right.
And now we are going to decide what we are going to do to recapture the destiny, which is ours, recapture our organizations and our civilizations that we built. So I think it can go hand in hand.
Yeah.
I think for myself, I want to keep one eye on who exactly is doing this to us.
Sure.
But at the same time, I want to lift up our people. And as you know, as a teacher, the training is to do this with children, do this with the next generation.
Yeah, yeah. And look at how rigorously the left is going after children. The whole, I mean, ever since the what do you call it, the trans, or what are they, the men that dress like women and doing the story times, and then and even with the vaccine and stuff. I mean, it's all about, this is a multi-decade project. The whole, rules for radicals, the whole thing, it's not, they knew it wasn't going to happen overnight. They knew that they would have to pass the torch on, that they would have to build new generations of like subversive, sick radicals that, and yeah, and so this is our work, you and I, people that are watching this show, is to get our media out, to get our message out. This is kind of the new direction that I want to be working with American Zarathustra, is to start focusing on taking back power, on building these institutions that are not infested with parasites. We in a sense, we have to rebuild our whole country from the inside out. We need our own internet. We need our own medical field. We need our own universities, our own schools, our own police, everything and anything that has been compromised. We have to either abandon it, destroy it, or fix it, or start over. Yeah, I mean, because we can't. The path we're on is the path of death, and if we don't change course soon, whites are like 59% of the population now in America. How much longer do we have? You see what I'm saying? So
yeah.
Well, this has been an exquisite show, and it's always a pleasure. It's always fun talking with you. I don't know what to say about those articles. I hope that someday the people who wrote those articles and read those articles can have their own racial enlightenment and stop hating themselves, stop greasing the wheels towards white genocide. And I want to thank the audience so much for joining us. It's extremely critical that you share this media as much as you can, engage as much as you can, subscribe, comment, and most importantly, go to schoolofthewest.world to check out Brant's work. Brant's really, really one of the key figures in rebuilding our world. He's foundational. So please promote his work as much as you can. And any last words there, Mr. Brant?
No, I think you wrapped it up really well. We'll get it done. We are going to win. I don't have any doubt about that. It's just a matter of how much time is it going to take, and how much of a mess is there going to be before we wake enough of our people up.
Yeah. The sooner we get it done, the better. All right. God bless everybody. Thank you so much, Brant, for joining us. And once again, thanks to the audience and the people in the comments. Please share, subscribe, and stay well.